new Grimoire vote has released. First choice you're given is Run Down the Center versus Vigilance. Run Down the Center is a totem perk that gives you incremental haste and chase. It's not called Hex Run Down the Center, which is actually really confusing to me. I'm wondering if it gives you haste whenever like a survivor cleanses or boons a totem, kind of like Secret Project currently gives you undetectable. If it just gives haste when survivors cleanse totems, it's going to be significantly nicher. It depending on how much the haste is, if it's like 20% haste, it could be like pretty good on hex builds as like your fourth non-hex perk to give you every time a survivor cleanses, you get essentially a chunk of a free down. If it ends up actually being a hex perk, it's a bit strange. It's because it's incremental. There's also the possibility that actually what it is each totem that's destroyed, it gives you more haste permanently or something like that, which would be kind of insane, maybe too strong even, actually. If it was like 3% haste permanently for each totem destroyed, or hell, even if it was 1, and now the killer just permanently has 3% haste because you cleansed Ruin, Undying, and Crowd Control, like that, even, like, we saw how much 3% haste can be when it's permanent with MFT, and yeah, it's on killer, it's not quite as insane, but, like, that could be kind of messed up. On the other hand, you have Vigilance, which is an obsession perk that gives you near perfect aura reveal. That's not that good of a perk, to be honest. Anything that has to do with the obsession needs to be a very strong perk, and aura reveal is just too specific to really be good. Aura reveal is something that like S tiers really thrive off of, and everybody that's like below, like B tier or below, it's very like iffy as to whether they'll get any value out of it. And since an obsession perk, like, oh, maybe it gives you near perfect aura reveal after you get a hook, or maybe it's when you hit them, it's something where you have to be doing a specific action in order to get aura reveal. So it's a very small, it occurs only occasionally, and also the effect it gives you is aura reveal. So I think that your choices are between potentially an incredibly overpowered perk. It depends on what the actual conditions are. There's not quite enough information here. Or a really, really weak perk. Personally going with Run Down the Center because worst case scenario, they could just nerf it into Oblivion and it would be as good as Vigilance. His best case scenario with Vigilance, right, is that it's overpowered on nerfs. Like that's the best thing that could possibly happen with Vigilance. There are some iterations I think of Run Down the Center where it could be balanced or it could be an interesting perk. Obviously, we don't have a huge amount of information, so it's kind of hard just to tell from this little snippet here, but we'll see. Next is Hex Flesh is Weak versus Hex Under the Thumb. Flesh is Weak is a perk that increases Exhausted. I mean, this would have to be like a lot. It would have to be like increases Exhausted by 300% or something like kind of ridiculous. Even then, if you have like 2 minutes of Exhausted, that's like a decent perk with the current like sprint burst vigil meta. Because, 2 minutes of exhausted, you take off, what is it, 60%. So 120 seconds times 0.4. Holy shit. Is Vigil really that overpowered? It would bring you back to normal exhausted status. Okay, honestly, as long as Vigil exists, increasing exhausted, I think it would have to be so ridiculous to the point where base kit exhausted is effectively non-existent and Vigil is the only perk that exists. So it kind of, as long as Vigil exists, I don't think that perk is going to be good for the game. Under Your Thumb, I think is a much more interesting design, depending on how they balance it again, but it limits the survivor haste. So if this is something like maximum of 10% haste or 20% haste, and you cut out like most of Sprint Burst and Life and yada yada yada, most of their speed boost way down, that would be really good, and it wouldn't make them like completely useless. 20% haste, I mean, you see it with Dramaturgy. 20% haste is not like nothing. Now, if it ends up being like, oh, well, it limits it to like 40%, something like that, then it's going to be pretty meh. But I think Under Your Thumb is a much more interesting perk. I think Flesh is Weak. With the way the game is currently balanced, it just is not going to work very well. If Vigil didn't exist, I feel like Flesh is Weak could be a decent perk. But as it stands, it's going to create like an unfun meta, I think. So Lay Waste, a perk that increases regression on near complete gens. If I'm reading this correctly, kind of like if you turn pop, um, like old pop where it did 20% of the maximum progress, like you added that on top of whatever regression you do to a gen. It's a little bit hard to like fully grasp what it means. My guess is that it's like when you get a hook, the next regression event you do does an additional like 10% of the gen's current progress, or an extra like 10% if a gen is above, 70% progress. It's gonna be like really hard because how do they balance it? Is it 30% above 70%? If it's if it ends up being like, oh, it's only like it does 20% extra on gens above 70%, then it's just like a worse pop that stacks. So I guess you would stack it with pop, but then only activate some of the time. On the other hand, if they make it where it's like 50% progress, like extra progress regression on a gen that's at 70%, that would be like kind of ridiculous. So I feel like lay waste, it really depends on what it is. There's a bunch of different ways this could be interpreted. It could be like, oh, it has a scaling thing where if a gen is at like 20% progress, then it'll do an extra 5%, and then 20 to 40 it does 10%, and then 40 to 80 it does 15, stuff like that. And that would probably be the best way to do lay to waste or something along those lines. Obviously, the specific numbers are going to be different, but just like sort of spitballing. But regression is kind of like a necessary evil in order for perks to really be good. On the other hand, we have Desolation, which perk thieves broken to stars who are nearby when they recover. So it's a twins perk, and that's it. Because what recover means is when you get up from being slugged. And the killers that want to slug all of the time are twins, and also that's it. And the only people who really care about giving broken to slugs, again, are the twins, because twins want to be setting up for a quad slug. But if you're playing almost any other killer, obviously like Blight and Nurse, they're always slugging, because they can do literally any strategy and win. But like, if you're looking more towards like B tier, if you're slugging, it's like opportunistic because somebody's right there, or you're slugging because they're under a pallet, or there's a flash safe, it's very specific scenarios, and having them be broken when they get up isn't that helpful unless it was really long broken. But again, it's like so opportunistic for so much more of the cast, and also like I don't really think that it's great to be like playing into making slugging better. Like this is a perk that would either be completely useless, exclusively useful on the twins and essentially nobody else, or so strong that everybody starts slugging. And I feel like no matter what, this is like bad. If it's completely useless, it's like 30 seconds of broken, then nobody uses it. Lame perk. If it's exclusively on the twins, like 90 seconds of broken or something, then twins get buff and they really don't need it. Or it's so strong, it's like, I don't know, 3 minutes of broken, something ridiculous like that. And maybe 2 minutes still would be strong enough to be worth using. If it's something super strong like that, then you have a meta where everybody's slugging, and servers really hate slugging. Killers don't really enjoy slugging. Like, it's not fun to slug. And also, currently, if you're slugged twice, you can abandon as survivor. So if this was strong enough to create a slug meta to make it usable on people other than twins, no games would ever be played out again. So I feel like Lay to Waste is like, that's what I'm going with, just because like Desolation, I feel like there's no good answer. Now looking at the survivor perks. You have Fruits of Your Labor, which is a token perk that gives incremental haste and healing, or Shooting Stars, which is a perk that synergizes elusive between survivors. Incremental haste and healing, it doesn't tell us when this increments, so it's really hard to say, but I'm worried because based on reading it, it doesn't say there's like an end to that haste. I'm guessing there probably is, but like it's something that I feel like is so easy to completely run, like be abysmally unfun to play against for like every weak killer if survivors get haste. And this is like, even if it's not permanent, if it's just like you get haste whenever you heal a survivor for 40 seconds at like 2% per like health state or something, or like 2% per hook after you heal the survivor, something like that. And it's like that still could be really bad. I feel like haste is just so it's bad on killer, but it is game breaking on survivor, and we've seen that with MFT. So, and then Shooting Stars is perk that shares elusive between survivors. It's not a good perk, really. Like, I mean, based on its face, I mean, because it sounds like somehow it's like teamwork collective stealth. Like, we know teamwork collective stealth is like a really bad perk. So the only way shooting stars could be a good perk if it had something to do with like unhooking. Like whenever you unhook, you and unhooked get elusive. That could be like a niche option for anti-tunnel. I think it's impossible to be a good perk. Like I think shooting stars is better than fruits of your labor just because haste on survivor is completely game breaking. So like that's what I would go with, but like it's not gonna be a great perk unfortunately. Next two choices are Salvation's Cry, a perk that shares aura when the killer starts a chase, or What Goes Around, a perk that banks tokens for a big pellet stun. Both of these are actually like decent perks. I think What Goes Around is a lot funnier. A big pallet, like imagine, you get tokens every time you heal a survivor, every time you unhook, whatever, and then like you get a stun on a killer, and they just sit there for like 5 seconds. That's really funny, and like it's frustrating as killer, but as long as they properly balance how many tokens you get, or like tokens to stun duration extension amount, I feel like this wouldn't be game breaking because 25% stun, the extra stun that you get on the Vault perk from Vecna, I can't remember what it's called, but that stun is like pretty noticeable. It's pretty funny to see. It's bad, but it's not that bad, and also you can play around it. What goes around, you can play around it, just don't get stunned forehead. I feel like it would be much more interesting compared to perk that shares auras when a killer starts chase. I mean, it would, in order for this to be a worthwhile perk, it would have to be a killer perk, but we already have alert or troubleshooter, or like we have a bunch of perks that already are involved in when in chase share the killer's aura. And if it shares the survivor's aura, then it's like, well, why would I run this instead of Kindred or Bond or whatever else, you know? So I feel like what goes around is like a funnier perk. Salvation's Cry, like, it could be a good perk, it's just that there's other perks that already do this. To me, the Palace Stun is the funny perk, and it's probably going to be better just because there's not really anything else like it on the Survivor side. It'll still probably be a niche perk, but, like, it'll be a funny niche perk. And obviously, this is hoping that they balance it properly. If they end up making, like, every time, a gen pops, plus 50% stun, then that'll be a problem. But if it's, like, I would say if it caps out at, like, an extra 30% stun, and then you spend all those tokens on that 30% stun, I feel like that would probably be a pretty, like, a decent perk and a funny perk. And then finally, you have Avant, a token perk that rewards scaring away crows, or Boon Steadfast, a boon perk that makes a single generator progress permanent. So first, I'm going to talk about Steadfast. I think that this is impossible to balance. It will either be useless or overpowered, and the reason for that is similar to a lot of gen perks. If the numbers are too low, it doesn't do anything. If the numbers are too high, it makes the game unbearable. Now this one doesn't say it gives you progress, it says it makes progress permanent. So I'm going to presume, for the moment, that it doesn't actually give you any extra progress. It's not like Fast Track, it just makes progress that's already been done permanent, which is what I wish they already did with making progress permanent already in the first place, but whatever. I'm going to presume that for now. If it were to be like Fast Track and it gives you progress and makes progress permanent, completely unbalanced. But if it makes already existing progress permanent, it would still be really hard to balance because what extent does it make this permanent? Is it every bit of progress is permanent and this gen just can't be regressed? Because if so, you have Swifts that all 4 of them run Boon Steadfast, and then the killer doesn't have regression perks, which a lot of the time is 3/4 of a killer's build in exchange for 1/4 of the survivor's build, essentially. Like, that would be insane. And the thing is, you don't even really need it that much, because most of the, like, you don't even need to set it up that badly. You could have it just on, like, 2 or even maybe 3 survivors. And it would still be really bad, because most of the time, the first 2 generators go by right around your first hook, just because of how, the early games often go, especially on weaker killers. And most of your gen regression is centered on those last 3 or so gens. So if survivors, hop on gens and do those first 2 or so gens, then they only need a couple of steadfast to make those last couple gens completely undefendable. I feel like there's no way to make it so that this is, like, balanced, because, oh, well, you could just stomp it out. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, it takes a long time to stomp out boons, first of all. Second of all, you have to actually find the boon, and sometimes you just can't. Sometimes you just simply cannot find a boon as killer, or if you do, it's on the opposite side of the map, and it takes you, like, 40 seconds to walk over there, because you're, like, Trickster, and it's so far away, and your 4.4 ass is on like swamp, and it's in a corner on the opposite side of the world, and you have to spend actually 40 seconds and 3 gens pop just by the time you cross the map and stomp the totem and then get back to where the gens are. Like, it's just, there's no way to balance this in a good way, I think. So by default, I think Avant is the better perk. Now, they don't tell you what they reward you with, which is a problem. As a token perk that rewards you for scaring away crows, scaring away crows giving you a bonus, I think is a cool idea. What that bonus is kind of determines how this perk can exist. If that bonus is gen speed, there's a problem. If that bonus is haste, there's a problem. If that bonus is something like elusive or heal speed, it can be balanced in a way. But if it is like, okay, for every crow you scare, you get plus 1% haste for 10 seconds, and then each crow adds an extra second, an extra percent of haste, that would probably be broken. If it gives you even just an extra friggin' like percentage, if it's just like a banked fast track where you get tokens scaring crows that you can throw into gens, it would either be useless because you would have to waste time outside of chase, or completely broken because you just in chase scare crows, which gives you tokens and essentially means that all your chase time gets directly converted into gen time. So if it's one of those two, I think it's fundamentally a flawed perk. But if it's something else like healing speed or like elusive or like a bunch of other things that aren't directly connected to gens and chase, I think it could be an interesting perk. That was everything. So tell me what y'all think. I feel like there's a couple of misses for perks. Some of them feel like are going to be fundamentally too weak if they win. Some of them feel like are going to be kind of broken, or either they're broken or they're really hard to balance. A few of them look like they're going to be like pretty decent, pretty fun perks no matter what. But let me know what y'all think, what y'all voted for. I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.